Senator, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So a lot has happened since the end of last session to the start of this session. A lot. I mean, that's an understatement, right? So how has that changed your caucus, and how do you plan on legislating this session? Has it impacted that?
I don't think it would be anything but honest to say that we've all been impacted by the level of political and human violence that we've experienced, here in the legislature with their colleagues being assassinated in the attempted assassination of Senator Hoffman and his family. The Annunciation shootings reminded us that our kids aren't necessarily safe in our schools. And the last month of violence at the hands of a federal government, I think, will have long-lasting impacts on us. And it has, I think, shifted us. I've spent more than time I ever anticipated on Capitol security and on gun violence prevention, which is something I came into office hoping to advance. And I think it is important for us to remember that our politics matter, our democracy matters, and we have to use that in order to protect it. And there are forces that are wanting to push people away from that, and we have to fight against that and make sure that Minnesotans are free to participate in their government and free to participate with their voices and the constitutional provisions that protect our free speech, our right to gather and assemble, to peacefully protest, to carry a weapon. Those things have all been challenged in the last month by this federal government. And we have to make sure Minnesotans understand that their freedoms are our imperative, and we're going to fight for them.
Yeah, you mentioned public participation, and there has been a lot. And a lot of what they've been saying is they've been asking for action from elected officials. So what are your options? You mentioned gun violence and Capitol security.
I want to give a lot of credit to my colleagues in our caucus who have been, since the 2024 election, preparing for the moment that we're in right now. And I have colleagues who have been just privately, and you wouldn't necessarily see them doing this, but providing a lot of support for their neighbors and families who feel fearful, who are afraid to leave their homes, or if they do, they want an escort. So I've got colleagues that are helping kids get to school, people get to work, providing support for food and for rent. They're serving as constitutional observers. They're, in some cases, mediating between community members and ICE. I have been so proud of my colleagues and really proud of Minnesota in the way they have stood up for what we believe in here in this state, for people's safety, for one another, and for a government that serves the people. As we come into session, I think there are things that Minnesotans are hoping that we will accomplish, whether it is a ban on masks. Senator Port is carrying that. Legislation that creates a civil right of action against federal actions that put us in harm's way. Senator Champion and Senator Fate are carrying that. I'm working on a piece of legislation that would require federal agents to follow Minnesota's law around rendering aid. It was unconscionable to me that Renee Good was allowed to first be shot and then allowed to die in her car without rendering aid. That's not what we expect in Minnesota, and if people are going to be in Minnesota, they should follow our laws. I think this president is very interested in rendering us neutral, like he has done with the Congress, and while the Congress has yielded to that, we are not. Minnesotans have a constitution, we have state laws, we expect the people that are coming into the state follow those, and we're going to make sure that we're working on that this session.
Any other top priorities this session that you're looking to take on?
I think you will see action on bonding, one of our primary principles this session, on another installment on the issue of fraud, something that we've worked on for the last now 4 years since we've come into this majority. I think, there are issues that have emerged as a result of the occupation here in the state of Minnesota dealing with housing and small businesses, so I've got colleagues who are taking a look at that. And then last, that big bill that the president is so proud of is causing real harm in the states, including ours. We've spent a fair amount of time this summer and fall in a subcommittee studying the federal impacts, and you'll see continued work on that, as well as our steps into understanding what we can do to mitigate the harm being caused by that legislation that the president signed into law.
You mentioned bonding, and this is a supplemental budget year, which means bonding and infrastructure and capital investments are going to be a focus, or at least they traditionally are. The governor has put forth his bonding bill proposal, and it's less than some members of the Capital Investment Committee had wished for. It's less than the need that has been requested. So where do you go from there?
Oh, the governor's going to propose he's going to make a proposal, and we welcome that, and we're going to make one as well. Senator Pappas, who leads capital investment or bonding for the Minnesota Senate, is she's interested in a more significant proposal than that, and she has the receipts. She spent a lot of time across the state talking with communities and community leaders about the needs that they have. It's significant. It's more than we could do in one bonding year, but she is determined to bring her voice and that of the other chairs, Senator Housley, Representative Fooley, Representative Mary Franson together, and a proposal that begins to meet more of the needs of the people of Minnesota.
You've previously said that infrastructure is not a tool for leverage. So how do you ensure that doesn't happen?
I can control my own behavior. I want to make sure that Minnesotans understand that our caucus is squarely behind a bonding proposal this year. We tried at the end of last session to get the leaders of the other caucuses to agree that we would do a significant bonding bill this year, and the Republicans declined to support that because they want to be able to use the tool of leverage to try and get something that they might not be able to achieve otherwise because they don't have the votes to pass it. So it will be left to them to see if they're going to use the bonding bill and the needs of Minnesotans for that goal, but we won't do that. We're gonna move a bonding bill, and hopefully we'll earn the votes to pass it.
I will say, I think that there is hope from the other caucus this session to get that done. I just saw a statement from Republican Senator Jason Rarick. He put it out saying, "My hope is it will follow last year's example, a bipartisan effort concentrating only on key infrastructure investments that are long overdue." So it sounds like you guys have done it before, and there's a wish to do it again.
Well, where there's a will to accomplish something, we can do it. And so that's why it's so important for me to be clear. We have the will to move a bonding bill this session. I, the beholder, in terms of what is necessary infrastructure, as Senator Rarick is describing there, but that's part of the negotiation over a bill. Once we've decided we'll do one, it is much easier to get it done. So that's the first question. I'm glad to hear his perspective.
All right, Senator, we're going to turn now to fraud. It's been highlighted as a reason for federal actions in the state, from funding cuts to that targeted enforcement that you mentioned. And critics have said that the state hasn't taken significant action to fight fraud in 8 years. How do you respond to comments like that, or where do we go from there?
Well, I would like to begin by saying these pages, many, many pages, is the litany of things that our caucus has passed since 2023. I think there are 5 or 6 pages here. The only thing that hasn't passed yet is the independent inspector general that Senator Gustafson has moved, and of course that got stalled out in the Minnesota House, so I hope that they hear that in the committees and bring it to a vote on the floor so the governor can take it up and sign it. We've taken the issue very seriously. We do not want programs that we put into place to be stolen by fraudsters, and we believe those people should be prosecuted. I'm worried about the ability to prosecute since we've seen a mass exodus from the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's a concern of mine, but let me say that I think this president used fraud as a pretext to do what he wanted to do already, to come into the state of Minnesota and level violent, sometimes reckless, and sometimes lawless force against the people of Minnesota. And perhaps he decided to use fraud as that pretext because of Nick Shirley and the YouTube videos that he did that have been proven false, but have hurt children and childcare. This is an incredible moment in our country right now, and we can't be playing games with people's lives. And that stunt with a YouTube video and the Republicans who invited him in was a stunt. So I think it's really important that the listeners hear from me that we take fraud very seriously. We have for the numbers of years that we have been in the majority since 2023. We've passed a number of pieces of legislation, and you will see one more round coming from us on program integrity around the human services work that continues that Senator Hoffman, Senator McQuaid, Senator Mohammed, Senator Fateh have already undertaken in that committee.
Senator, let's now go to the budget. Is there any appetite this session to address that looming deficit we see in the planning years in fiscal year 28-29?
So we did tremendous work on that question when we balanced the budget in 2025. It is the last thing that we did during the special session, was finalize a budget that, of course, is in place, and we narrowed that looming deficit to a couple $100 million. We're seeing that shift now, I think, in part because of the federal government and that big bill that they passed and the things that they have done to Minnesota over the course of the fall. That's really frustrating to me. I'm grateful we have a budget in place. We have been incredible stewards of Minnesota's tax dollars. We have a surplus, a modest surplus, and I hope that we are very, very frugal in the session. I think that's going to be important. But if we pass a bonding bill, we have to pay for the debt service. There are security measures that we've put in place that are going to cost us a little bit of money. So there will be, I think, a small omnibus supplemental budget bill. But the balancing of the budget in the out years, I think now is in question because of the federal government and the things that they have done to the state of Minnesota. We will see those impacts in the upcoming forecasts. And you should know that we are going to be like a dog with a bone to make sure that we continue to balance the budget, because that's our job. We're committed to that in our caucus. We're not going to play games.
I thought it was really nice during MMB's November forecast how they made a special note of how hard you guys worked last session to balance the budget. So, you know, it's noticed.
Yeah.
Final
That's good.
Yes. The final question to you. You've talked about how senators need to work together regardless of their caucus. Are there any plans in the works to encourage that kind of collaboration?
I think we've grown a lot in that direction. And I think you'll continue to see it. I've, seen Leader Johnson and my Republican colleagues over the course of the summer and the fall. We've experienced some tragedy together. We're also heading into an election year that sometimes fosters division more than it does the ability to work together. And we have to do two things. We do need to show Minnesotans that we are committed to them and doing the work. I always invite my colleagues to join me in that work, and we will continue to do that. And then we will take ourselves out into the campaign trail and make our cases to the people of Minnesota about why we're the ones who should have the ability to continue to lead. Those things fit together in our world, and one should not negate the other. So I look forward to working with Leader Johnson and my Republican colleagues as we move forward this session.
I hope to catch you guys on one of your walks together one of these days. All right, Senator, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.